It's the top 25 April wine songs of all time. I'm John Bowden from Rock History Book. They're certainly one of the most enduring Canadian rock bands, and one of the most successful. Led by Myles Goodwin, the group always had multiple personalities. They were a rock band that could produce some of the most gorgeous love ballads, who came up with some of the best driving tunes ever to come out of Canada. They were also very prolific and successful, charting a top 40 hit at least once a year from 1971 until 1982. In all, April Wine had 21 top 40 singles. We'll talk about their albums in our next video in a couple of weeks, the top April Wine albums of all time. We did this poll last year and received 11,145 votes. So thanks to everyone who voted. Number 25, from the platinum album of the same name, The Whole World's Going Crazy, which went number 1 in Canada. It was their 5th album and the first Canadian release in history to have platinum advanced sales orders. Like its namesake, it was a crazy little tune with sped up vocals in the chorus that sounded very much like a guest appearance from the guy on the cover, the Mad Hatter. It peaked at number 5 on the charts. Number 24, their very first hit from 1971 and the self-titled album. Their first recording incarnation included Myles Goodwin on vocals and guitar, and 3 from the Henman family, brothers David on vocals and guitar, Richie on drums, plus cousin Jim on vocals, guitar, and bass. It's the only track on the countdown from that debut album, or the Foot album, or Feet as some people call it, and it's the only project with that specific lineup of April Wine. Number 23, from 1985, and Walk Through Fire. It was their first album without longtime April Wine drummer Jerry Mercer, also absent Gary Moffat. Steve Lang was also gone, who, by the way, we lost in February 2017 at the age of 67. Lang was brought in to replace Jim Clench in 1976. The album didn't chart in Canada, and this tune was not a top 40 hit, but we had 199 fans voting for Love Has Remembered Me. 22 just like that from the 1973 classic album Electric Jewels. The band was really starting to form a sound. This was not a hit single, but it might as well have been, since it got airplay across the country. This project featured the best example of that 1-2 punch of 2 strong vocalists, Myles Goodwin and late great bassist Jim Clench, who we lost in November 2010. As well as sharing the vocals, they also shared songwriting duties on the album. Number 21. This could be the right one from 1984 and Animal Grace. It was a single but didn't reach the top 40, but remains a fan favorite, receiving 223 votes out of our 11,145. It was also the last single to feature the golden era April Wine lineup: Myles Goodwin, Brian Greenway, Gary Moffat, Steve Lang, and Jerry Mercer. Number 20, a lost Elton John Bernie Taupin tune. That was the B-side of his single Border Song from his second album. It would later appear on Elton's live 17/11/70 album. But to many Canadian fans, Bad Side of the Moon was an April Wine tune, since Elton's version was not that well known. It's from their 1972 project On Record, and it peaked at number 16 on the chart. Number 19, fast forward to 1982 and April Wine's follow-up to their biggest selling album worldwide, Nature of the Beast, which was released the year before. Enough is Enough from Power Play reached number 8, and the album went platinum in Canada. Number 18, the first of 5 tracks from 1975's classic Stand Back. Don't Push Me Around. There have been a few logo-worthy trademark items in the April Wine family. That red sparkle Goya guitar on the cover of Electric Jewels. Of course, the Mad Hatter on the cover of The Whole World's Going Crazy. The guitar-shredding lion on the cover of Nature of the Beast. And the famous cannon, which is on the cover of Stand Back. And like the Mad Hatter, made it on stage during April Wine shows. Number 17, Lady Run, Lady Hide from 1973 and Electric Jewels. As good as this record is, it really was the tip of the iceberg for the band's popularity. Electric Jewels had 3 singles: Weeping Widow, which by the way is coming up on our countdown, the title song, and Lady Run, Lady Hide. Being the only hit on this project, he peaked at number 19 on the Canadian charts. 16, Come Hear the Band from 1975 and the double platinum Stand Back album. This was the first of a few major phenomenons for this band. Even though that Lennon-McCartney songwriting partnership between Goodwin and Clench that worked so well on Electric Jewels broke down during the recording of this album, and in the end, Stand Back would be the only April Wine album with the most hits at 4. Number 15, You Won't Dance With Me from 1977 and the Forever For Now album. The number 6 hit received 277 votes. It was also their biggest selling single, and the tune came to that 50 sound naturally, since Myles Goodwyn originally wanted the album to be a solo project and wanted to tip his hat to his earlier musical heroes like Buddy Holly and the Everly Brothers. But unfortunately, the band really couldn't take a break financially, so Forever For Now became an April Wine album. You Won't Dance With Me is the only tune from this project, which had many varied sounds which somehow seemed to work on our top 25. Number 14, Drop Your Guns. We go to the second album from 1972 on record. It was a number 34 hit from a number 35 album. The riff from the tune was inspired by Shine On by Humble Pie. And Drop Your Guns had that anthem feel that still sounds amazing in concert today. It's another great example of how April Wine songs have really stood the test of time. This one was written by guitarist David Hedman. Number 13, I'm On Fire For You Baby. A single release from 1974, it's another one of those very few songs not written by the band. That's in our top 25. There was also a live version released from their simply titled live album from 1974. Number 12, Weeping Widow from 1973. It's the song that opens the album Electric Jewels and is sung by late great bassist Jim Clench, who sang lead on 2 tunes from our top 25 and 1 co-lead with Myles Goodwyn. We interviewed the band in the year 2000, including Clench, and we'll feature that interview in the next few months. Clench left April Wine after the Stand Back album was released in 75. In the late 70s, he joined BTO for 2 albums, Street Action and Rock and Roll Nights. He rejoined April Wine in 1992, and as mentioned before, Jim Clench died on November 3rd, 2010. He was 61. Number 11, Say Hello from 1979 and Harder Faster. The first of 2 from that album in our top 25, with 329 votes. Drummer Jerry Mercer gives us a gorgeous, unforgettable intro. It's also one of those tunes that sounds great on any stereo, thanks to the production of Myles Goodwyn and Nick Blagona. Number 10, Like a Lover, Like a Song from 1976 and The Whole World's Going Crazy. It received 345 votes, which is very respectable when you consider our number 1 song, that's coming up in a little bit, got 418 votes. An incredibly strong ballad that truly demonstrates Myles Goodwyn's amazing versatility to write strong melodies, whether they're octane fuel crashers or like this one. A beautiful melancholy tale on the transitions of love. Like a Lover, Like a Song will always go down as one of the true Myles Goodwyn April Wine classics. Number 9, Just Between You and Me from 1981 and The Nature of the Beast. Interestingly, even though this is their biggest selling album, and arguably their best, it only produced 2 songs in our top 25, even though every song on this project got quite a bit of votes. The others did well though. Crash and Burn came in at number 26, the opening track from the album, All Over Town, at number 29, and One More Time at number 36. Just Between You and Me, as far as the charts, peaked at number 22 in Canada, number 21 in the US. Number 8, You Could Have Been a Lady from 1972 and on record. This was a huge song for the band, and probably the first time most fans ever heard them on the radio. Written by Errol Brown and Tony Wilson for Hot Chocolate, whose signature tune was You Sexy Thing from 75. Their original version from 1971 was not a US hit, but reached number 22 on the UK charts, while April Wine's rock version reached number 2 in Canada, making it their highest charting song ever. Number 7, Tonight Is a Wonderful Time to Fall in Love from 1975 and Stand Back. It received 368 votes. This album had more tunes in our top 10 than any other project, with 3. The other 2 are at number 5 and number 4. It's another example of how much the group evolved through the years. Even though this album had the rockers like Ooh What a Night, Don't Push Me Around, or Not For You, Not For Rock and Roll, just to name 3. It also features some powerhouse, truly big pop hits. And this one was the highest charting, peaking at number 5. Number 6, Rock and Roll Is a Vicious Game from 1978 and First Glance. It received 371 votes. There have been hundreds of tunes about the perils of a career in rock and roll, including Tom Petty's Into the Great Wide Open, Turn the Page by Bob Seger, Shooting Star by Bad Company, just to name a few. If anyone knew firsthand, it was Myles Goodwyn. First Glance was the band's 7th album, and they were at least 9 years into this project when he wrote the song. There was an interesting saying circulating Canada that you could go gold and ride the bus. April Wine worked hard in the 70s. They earned it, and even though they had tough years, they did incredibly well. Though the tough side of rock and roll might have hit these guys a few times, they just kept getting up and getting the job done. I always found it interesting that this band played smaller towns much past the point where they really had to. Number 5, I Wouldn't Want to Lose Your Love, from 1975 and Stand Back. 374 votes out of our 11,145. It seems fitting that this tune would be in the top 5. The mid-70s was a very important point for the band, and Stand Back was not only one step forward from Electric Jewels, its predecessor, and that one was a classic, but people were starting to pay attention to Myles Goodwyn not only as a rock and ballad singer, but an incredibly gifted songwriter. This guy had tricks in his tickle trunk, and Stand Back pulled out all the stops. From 50s flavored melodies that Goodwyn always transformed into that 70s sound. Number 4, Ooh What a Night, the 5th and last one from 1975, Stand Back. 390 votes. Thanks to Saturday Night Live, it seems almost a rite of passage to have a cowbell song in your repertoire. April Wine had a few, including Drop Your Guns and Weeping Widow, but this was the biggest one. Written and sung by the late great Jim Clench, it opens with that appropriate sense of rock and roll urgency via that cowbell, and it's a highlight in any April Wine show with their rock and roll strobes. When Clench left the band, his bass replacement Steve Lang took over the vocal duties for this tune. Now Brian Greenway, who first appeared on April Wine's 1978 First Glance album, sings the song on stage. Greenway, along with Steve Lang and drummer Jerry Mercer, were all part of the Quebec band Mash McCann before joining April Wine. Number 3, Sign of the Gypsy Queen from 1981. Nature of the Beast with 395 votes. A rocker with soaring vocals from Goodwyn and a tempo that's geared to give you speeding tickets. In fact, April Wine's top 4 tunes on this countdown are all rockers, written by Lawrence Hudd and featured on his debut album from 1972 where he played all the instruments. It became a Canadian hit for him 9 years earlier. Hudd has had a long, bizarre battle with government agencies in Canada via a drainage issue he had in his home in Ontario. It led to a police standoff in the summer of 2017. April Wine's version peaked at number 40 in Canada, while Hudd's original got to number 16. But judging from the response on this poll, April Wine did it best. Number 2, Roller from 1978 and First Glance, 402 votes. As mentioned earlier, the band had a hit on the Canadian charts every year from 1971 to 1982. That's an 11-year streak. But this song, interestingly, was only their second hit in the US. You Could Have Been a Lady being the first from 72. After the release of Forever For Now in 1977, the album, as we mentioned, was meant to be Myles Goodwyn's first solo album, and a project with a lot of different genres, half a dozen. First Glance was a return to no-nonsense rock for April Wine. Number 1, I Like to Rock, 1979, and the Harder Faster album with 418 votes. Only 16 votes separated our top 2 tunes. That's how close it got. The band certainly likes to rock, since the word is mentioned in no less than 10 of their tunes, most written by Myles Goodwyn. But then again, they are a rock band. I Like to Rock was the very first song on the album, and it kind of tips its hat to the Beatles' Day Tripper and the Stones' Satisfaction via their riffs played simultaneously at the end of the song. It was pure genius and amazing how everything just played together perfectly. These songs have stood the test of time because of all the members who have contributed to this band, but especially, of course, to Myles Goodwyn. As mentioned, in the next few weeks, we're going to release the top 16 April Wine studio albums of all time based on the song votes that we received from this poll, which we did last year. And you will find a few big surprises. Keep in mind, Myles Goodwyn has a new blues album called Myles Goodwyn and Friends of the Blues. It's being released in March, features Amos Garrett, Frank Marino, David Wilcox, Rick Derringer, among a host of others. Growing up, April Wine was always my favorite Canadian band. When I was 12, I heard You Could Have Been a Lady, and I became a super fan immediately. I bought every single one of their albums on the very day they were released. Seen the band 7 times in concert. As mentioned, I interviewed them in 2000. Myles Goodwyn, Jim Clench, Brian Greenway, and the great drummer Jerry Mercer. And as we lose so many great bands, and we have lost Jim Clench and Steve Lang, this is a moment right here that I'm glad that we still have the boys around. Coming up in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be featuring the top 16 April Wine albums of all time. And we may have a visit from the Mad Hatter in that video. I'm John Bowden. Make sure you comment on our videos, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos. This is Rock History Book.